everybody who's on the platform, on the briefing on the post-budget briefing by the Minister of Finance. Good morning, you're all welcome. Let me welcome the Minister of Finance, the Deputy Minister and Team Treasury to our platform, honorable members and our support staff. You are welcome. Welcome the provincial MECs, especially from Finance, who are on the platform, and all other MECs who are present. Honorable provincial chairs of committees and members on the platform, members of SALGA maybe on the platform, and everybody. My name is Fiso Buthelezi. I'm co-chairing today's session with the Honorable Joma Sangani, who's the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance. I chair the Standing Committee on Appropriations. I won't spend a lot of time. Our agenda, as I said at the beginning, it's simply the post-budget presentation by the Minister of Finance. And then after that, we'll engage with the presentation, and then we'll give the Minister and his team an opportunity to respond to some of the things that would have been raised in the meeting. And I think after that, we'll adjourn. But before I do that, Lubabalo, can we have apologies?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, from the Select Committee on Appropriations, maybe we may combine them together with the Select Committee on Finance. We have an apology from Chairperson Masango. She has a bereavement at home. Honorable Karim is attending the KZN State of the Province address. Honorable Mamarachane is attending the Limpopo State of the Province address. Honorable Okam is unable to join us due to prior commitments, and Honorable Moletsane is currently in the EFF caucus. As soon as the caucus is adjourned, Honorable Moletsane will join the meeting. From Province's Chair, Honorable Maslango has invited the provincial chairpersons. We received a few apologies from Gauteng. The chairperson and the committee are unable to attend due to State of the Province address. Limpopo is the same case, Chair, and also Northern Cape. Thank you so much, Chairperson. Over to you.
Thank you. Let me allow the Minister of Finance, Honorable Kotongwane, and thank you for the budget yesterday. As we all know, that is the budget which was presented under very difficult and trying economic situation. Honorable Minister, please come in.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I'm not going to delay. I wanted to DDG Edgar Sishi to take us through, but my apology is that I'm going to the G20 meeting on today, so I'll be asked to be released at about 11:30, an hour from now. I don't know, and I would like to Edgar just to take us through some few slides. And if with your permission, Chair, that's what I would like to do so that we don't waste time.
Please proceed, Mr. Sishi.
Honorable Chair.
Yes. Sorry, who's that?
Honorable Chair, this is Honorable De Tooy. Apologies for interrupting the DG and the Minister. I think it's just an important point that we need to raise in this meeting. If I recall, in most of the meetings where the Minister joined virtually, he did himself before the meeting was finished. And we're currently sitting in a situation where this budget that was tabled is one of the most important events in the calendar of this country. And every time something happens and the Minister cannot give his full attention to answering the questions of the members. And I want to request, if possible, Honorable Chair, that in future, when the budget is tabled and we're in lockup, that we be presented with this presentation that the GG wants to present now, to allow members to scrutinize it. And when we engage with the minister, to have the minister only focus on answering the questions of members so that we can play our oversight role effectively. I think it would be to the benefit of all, and more than that, to the benefit of the country, for us to be allowed the opportunity to engage in a manner so that all questions can be answered and the priorities be addressed, and the minister be allowed to fulfill his duty as well to account to members of parliament. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Tutoy, I think that's noted. Minister would note that. I also see Honorable Ryder. Your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I'd like to latch on to what Mr. Tutoy has just said, and indicate that, you know, Mr. Gurungwana has, since his appointment as Minister of Finance, not yet presented himself before any select committee meeting of the National Council of Provinces. Now, I can't speak, of course, for the Portfolio Committee, but we only see him at joint meetings, and then for a very brief period of time. Chairperson, we have a duty of oversight, and it would be much more helpful if we could really get to engage with the minister and get a little bit of a better understanding from him. To leave us in the hands of the officials is a little unfair on them, but it's also unfair on us and on South Africans. And Chair, the minister needs to subject himself to the oversight of the committees. And I understand he's got other commitments, but this is a once-a-year meeting where we really should be engaging with this thing deeply and properly, and there's some deep political questions that need asking here. We're not going to get a chance to do that, and it's most unfortunate because, so if he's leaving at 11, perhaps we should start our questions now, because he's not going to answer them. He's going to leave the staff to answer the questions, and again, it's unfair for them to be placed in a situation where they're having to answer political questions. Sure. And you know,
just a second.
As a result, we're going to be able to do the oversight that we need.
Just a second, Minister. Just a second. Let the Honorable Writer finish. You know, Honorable Members, what I want to do, and I don't even want to give the Minister to. I see I've got Honorable Kaiso, I've got Honorable Abraham, Honorable George. Can I say, Honorable Members? I think the points made by the two honorable members, I think they are taken into consideration, and us as chairs of this meeting, I think one, the minister said he is requesting to leave at 11:30. Okay, that's one, not 11, and two, there is a deputy minister on the platform. So he can also take questions. But number three, without talking to the minister and my other co-chairs, I think we're definitely going to get a session with the minister where we must have even more time again after this presentation. I think the point that is being made, it's valid points. I don't know whether the members with their hands up will still want to insist, because I want us to get into the meat of the meeting. Otherwise, we'll end up spending a lot of time about this thing, which is, I think, a point well taken. I see Honorable George, do you want to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that it is not acceptable that we have such a short period of time with the minister. I understand that the minister is very busy and that there are many, many priorities, but we've seen yesterday that we have lost the CEO of Eskom very abruptly, etc. And we've got a massive amount of debt that government plans to transfer to the national balance sheet. These things are all interrelated with one another. So having such a short period of time isn't acceptable, and we're going to have to make another time. Parliament is a very important institution, and it appears as if it isn't receiving the priority that it deserves. That is a major problem, and I'd like to register my strongest objection to the fact that we're unable to have a proper engagement with the minister at this very crucial time. Thank you.
Honorable Nakolo.
Hey, can you hear me, Chair?
Very well, thanks. I know what
Okay.
I was trying to, but I mean,
Yes, no, Chair, I was going to say that without further ado, let us get to the presentation and just purpose to finish with presentations at 11, so that even if we don't, we start with interactions at 11, exactly, so that we do have some time to interact, because I know that we might put another time, which we will have during the course of the year. However, now that the budget has been presented, members may be eager to interact. So I put the proposal of 11 o'clock.
Honorable members, can you proceed, or really you would insist on talking? Because I just wanted to see how far we go with how far we go with the presentations and the minister coming in. We may be preempting something that the minister, which is a problem which is not there. But I've just said to you, honorable members, that us as chairs, the minister is going to this thing, and there's nothing stopping us from getting the minister back to come and address some of the issues that the members would like to interact with the minister about. Can we live with that? And Honorable Sheikh, seriously, would insist on talking?
No, Chair, I think I concur with you. The minister's got a pressing issue which he needs to go to, and we can set another date so that we can raise all our concerns with the minister to go forward, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sishi, please come in and start with your presentation. And Minister, I'm sure you have noted that, and as I've committed that we are going to have a session with your good self and the oral members, so that they can have an opportunity to interact with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, and colleagues. The presentation will go very quickly since we note the deadline of 11 o'clock. My colleague and I will take members through. My colleague, Boipuso Modise, Head of Economic Policy, will take us through the economic outlook. Thank you, Chair.
Proceed.
Go for it.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. My name is Boipuso Modise. I'm the Head of Economic Policy, and I'll be taking you through the economic outlook very briefly. To begin, looking at the global environment, growth in 2023 is expected to slow from where it was in 2022. The IMF, through the World Economic Outlook, projects growth of 2.9% in 2023, as opposed to 3.4% in 2022. This is reflective of a few things, chief among them being the slowing of some significant economies and many of our largest trading partners, including in Europe and in the United States specifically. In addition to which, we note with concern that China's manufacturing activity was adversely affected by their zero COVID policy in 2022. And our expectation of the removal of this policy at the end of last year in December should likely provide some gradual support to activity. That said, however, we still expect global growth to slow in this year. In addition, the impact of inflation have had negative implications on the price environment globally, and subsequently many economies have had to tackle inflation by increasing the cost of borrowing through their interest rates, which has implications as well for the accommodativeness of the global environment. In this context, many risks still persist, and this collectively means that we have to look more for the impetus for growth from domestic drivers of growth, as opposed to the global environment, which we expect to be softening, certainly in EM. Next slide, please, Edgar. Looking at the domestic economy, growth has been revised up from our 2022, from the MTBPS projections in 2022 to 2.5%. And this largely reflects a significant upside surprise that we found in the third quarter of GDP. And this has subsequently placed pressure on our in-year forecasts at the time of for 2022. And we now expect growth to be at 2.5%. Over the medium term, however, we've revised growth downwards specifically in 2023, reflecting two major developments. The first is the slowing momentum in the global environment, but the second is significant and protracted load shedding, which we expect to have significant and negative consequences on growth in year, but also over the medium term, as we expect the load shedding constraint to be with us, certainly over the medium term at least. There are also other constraints to growth by way of structural issues, including in rail. But in our observation, electricity supply constraints remain the most significant constraint to growth. Looking at risks to the outlook, our sense is that risks remain elevated, and they are both in the global and in the domestic environment. In the global environment, as I'd mentioned, monetary policy tightening could have implications for the supportiveness and global demand. Secondly, any disruptions to global supply chain or inflationary pressures stemming from the ongoing conflict in the ongoing war in Ukraine could have significant and negative implications for inflation, and subsequently as well for the accommodativeness of the external environment. Domestically, chief among our constraints and risks continue to be power cuts by way of intense and protracted load shedding. We're particularly also concerned about the pace of implementation of reforms in key areas like energy and rail, which could have negative implications for business confidence and have implications for long-range economic decisions like investment and employment. Of course, other structural constraints like criminality have implications not only to growth, but also national security. And we are also concerned and are subsequently emphasizing once more the importance of staying the course on the fiscal strategy to the extent that it could result in negative externalities for the economic environment as well. Next slide, please, Edgar. To address these structural constraints to the economy, our sense is that three significant elements need to be elevated to meet our economic challenges. The first is the continued provision of a stable macroeconomic policy framework, which creates the foundation for a more durable recovery and a general growth environment. The second is the expeditious implementation of reforms. As we know, we have had some success through Operation Vulindlela, but also many reforms are also gaining traction through the economic recovery plan. However, despite this progress, our sense is that two key areas require critical interventions, and they're specifically in energy, electricity specifically, and in freight rail. Our sense of the most significant interventions in the near term include implementing the NECOM interventions for addressing the energy constraint, including improving Eskom's plant performance, increasing the ease at which private generators can produce energy, also supporting the rollout of rooftop solar, my apologies, to households and businesses, including through tax incentives, which are detailed in the budget review, and implementing a wheeling framework to ensure and create a more conducive environment for private sector participation in energy generation and transmission. In rail specifically, our sense is that several reforms are currently underway to increase performance in the area. Some significant progress is in the form of the economic regulation of transport bill, which was tabled in Parliament and is currently with the National Council of Provinces. Software upgrades to increase the efficiency of rail through better signaling also happening. It is also going to be critical to emphasize and to strengthen steps to prevent theft and vandalism, as well as resolving legal challenges in relation to locomotives procurements. And of course, granting third-party access to the rail network is going to be important. I would also like to point out that the budget also makes allocations to infrastructure investment, as well as addressing crime and corruption, which have had significant and negative implications on these critical areas of economic growth. Let me leave it there and hand over to Edgar to speak to the fiscal framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will proceed from here. Just to emphasize, as the Minister indicated when he tabled the budget yesterday, the different elements of the fiscal strategy around sustainability, supporting economic growth and reducing risks. And the strategy is also particularly focused on ensuring that tax increases that would overburden households are avoided. And so tax relief is provided in the budget. In addition to that, spending support is provided to vulnerable households. In a general sense, the budget continues to provide a majority of the spending to the social wage. And then finally, within this context, there is an attempt to gradually restore baselines that were eroded over time during the period of so I will skip this because this is a detail about the in-year revenue and go straight to those tax proposals, which are indicated now. As Minister indicated yesterday, in essence, the 2023 budget provides tax relief of 13 billion. So there are no tax rate increases in the budget, but there is tax relief rather of 13 billion. A considerable amount is to support the clean energy transition and of course help to increase electricity supply, as well as cushioning the impact of consistently high fuel prices by not adjusting the general fuel levy for inflation. The medium-term revenue outlook outlines the revised estimates over the MTEF. As Minister indicated, in the current year, we anticipate tax revenue collections of 1.69 trillion rands. From the expenditure side, there are several elements to the expenditure. The first is in-year expenditure adjustments. Some of these were proposed back in October as part of a special appropriation bill. In addition to that, it is proposed that a second adjustments appropriation bill be considered, which includes elements, again, that the minister outlined yesterday, as indicated here in the slide, for South African Airways, South African Post Office, as well as an amount that had previously been set aside for the Land Bank. The major adjustments in the second adjustments appropriation. The second element on the spending side is changes to the medium-term main budget non-interest expenditure over the 2023 MTEF. To summarize, the budget proposes additional funding into departments amounting to 227 billion rands. So this is an increase in the baselines that were there in the previous budget, additional money that's being added over and above what was in the baselines at the time of the previous budget. The sources of this are mostly a net change in non-interest expenditure, but also some of the funds are sourced from reserves that had been set aside in the past, in the previous budget and at the time of the MTBPS, that are now being made available to departments. Another aspect of the budget is the Eskom debt relief arrangement. Major debt relief of 254 billion rands over the next 3 years is announced as part of this budget. This is a balance sheet transaction, not a spending appropriation, which means that it is addressed in a separate piece of legislation tabled before Parliament for consideration. A finance bill, the Eskom debt relief bill, is tabled to effect the arrangement. The goal is to strengthen the utilities balance sheet, enable it to restructure and undertake the investment and maintenance needed to support security of electricity supply. In the main, government will provide Eskom with advances of 78 billion rands next financial year, 66 billion rands the following year, and 40 billion rands the year thereafter. Over and above this, in 2025-26, government will directly take over up to 70 billion rand of Eskom's loan portfolio. Put together, this comes to the 254 billion rands. Government will have to borrow a considerable amount in order to obviously provide this relief. However, this will be financed in part through offsetting this from the 66 billion rands MTF baseline provision, which was originally approved by Parliament in the 2019 budget and was in the 2022 MTBPS. That money will be used to cushion the borrowing requirement as part of the takeover of Eskom debt. The debt relief arrangement will be subject to strict conditions, but will relieve extreme pressure on the utilities balance sheet. Those conditions are outlined in the budget review in the main in Annexure W3, which is an online annexure to the budget review. Let's turn quickly to the debt path. In summary, the scale of Eskom debt relief increases government borrowing as indicated, resulting in debt stabilizing later than what we projected at the time of the MTBPS. In the graph on the right, the gray line shows the MTBPS estimate for debt. The red line shows the estimate for debt now, post the takeover of Eskom debt by the sovereign. We also want to indicate that government remains focused on managing contingent liabilities. In other words, in addition to the debt that government has, there are a number of contingent liabilities. The debt of government is projected to increase from 4.7 trillion rands in the current year to 5.84 trillion rands in 25-26. Again, post the Eskom debt takeover, and also because of various other issues, including the more muted economic outlook, as my colleague has indicated. Contingent liabilities, in other words, liabilities that are not currently in the fiscal framework, are estimated at over 1 trillion rands in the current year, but they are set to decline over the MTEF. I will skip this slide because it reflects, as indicated by the minister yesterday, after all of these transactions are taken into account, that the budget balance continues to improve. We are continuing to focus on ensuring that the deficit does not increase, and our medium-term estimates outline the gradual decline of the fiscal balance. On the expenditure side, and this is going towards the end of the presentation, as indicated, the budget prioritizes social spending for the vulnerable and for the poor. The social wage will constitute an average of 60.2% of the total non-interest spending over the next 3 years. A significant amount of funds will go to learning and culture, which is dominated by education, both basic and higher education, and then other social services are also funded to a significant degree in the budget. Turning to infrastructure, we provide an outline of the total public sector infrastructure estimates over the next 3 years. Public sector infrastructure spending over the MTF is estimated at 903 billion rands. State-owned companies are the largest contributor to this amount. Provinces are expected to spend just under 210 billion, municipalities just over 190 billion, and the smallest portion is binational, which is 54.6 billion rands. Just to indicate that the budget is very much focused on direct and specific injections rather than general across the board increases. And so there's a focused and prioritized approach. And one of the big areas of priorities in this budget is government plans on fighting crime and corruption. These are indicated here as outlined by the minister, both in respect of the increases to the police budget, increases to the budget for the Special Investigating Unit and the Department of Defense, as well as the National Prosecuting Authority, and of course, as indicated, additional funding to the South African Revenue Service. The minister has already outlined our progress in respect of combating financial crimes and illicit activities and the FATF approach that we're currently in, the Financial Action Task Force. I'm not going to repeat all of them because they were part of both the speech as well as the outline that we've given in the budget review. But in essence, they reflect the fact that we have already addressed most of the deficiencies that have been raised by FATF. But of course, there's still more work to do, and that work is going to continue over the coming days and weeks and months. This slide reflects the division of revenue and shows that a majority of the funding over the medium term, unlike the current year, will actually go to provinces and local government in terms of the division of revenue. This slide reflects the financial position of state-owned companies. I'm not going to go through it because it is dominated by the Eskom issues, which we already outlined. Notwithstanding the fact that we are projecting an improvement in the fiscal balance, there are risks to that outlook, which, should they materialize, would cause the fiscal numbers to look quite different. These include the financial conditions globally. If they were to deteriorate, would affect government's fiscal position. The weak financial position of condition of several state-owned companies. If a public service wage agreement that exceeds what we have at the moment, that also constitutes a risk. And then, of course, other spending pressures. I will then close by indicating, as my colleague has outlined, the economic growth outlook for 2023 is not as strong as we anticipated at the time of the MTBPS. And this obviously will mean that government needs to continue the focus on addressing growth limiting electricity and transport challenges in particular, which are a key part of the reason. Government's fiscal consolidation measures have registered some progress because the budget deficit continues to narrow, and we are able to provide debt relief to Eskom as a result of the improved fiscal position. Revenue collection remains strong in the past year. Additional spending allocations are much more focused. They're not across the board, and they're focused on specific key policy priorities, including, as I've indicated, addressing the challenges in respect of crime and corruption. The budget provides other targeted allocations to provinces and municipalities with an emphasis on key services like education and free basic services. And finally, there are major risks in respect to the fiscal outlook, which needs to be borne in mind. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sishi. Honorable members, let me thank you for the presentation. Can you please indicate? I'm looking at your hands. I see Honorable George, Honorable Sheikh, Honorable Tutoit, Honorable Ryder, Honorable Morolong. Honorable members, please, can we try to be very economic with our questions? Let's go straight to the point so that we, Minister, I'll really ask, plead with you that we stretch it beyond half past. At least let's go to 12 and see how far we go. So, honorable members, okay. Let me start with those honorable members. I see your hands. After after 4 speakers, then I'll call out your names. Let's start in that order. I asked the honorable. I started with Honorable Detroit. Okay, let's start, and then Honorable George and Honorable Wright and Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I've got 4 questions. Firstly, what does National Treasury envisage as the specific requirements and any exclusions pertaining to the 125% reduction on the cost of renewable energy for businesses as announced? And why is this deduction for personal income tax capped at 15,000 Rand? What informed this amount? When will the tax laws amendment bill enabling tax incentives on renewable energy be tabled? Third one, is there any appropriation for disaster relief funds for the state of disaster regarding the energy crisis? And where will these funds come from and to whom will it be dispersed? And lastly, how is the Eskom relief debt of 337 billion rand going to be financed? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Member. I think you have led by example. Can I get the next member to come in? Honorable,
Yes,
Sheikh.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Chairperson, you said I was next, George. It's Honorable George. You said I was next.
Okay, Honorable George, I'll let you in just now that Honorable Sheikh is in. Sorry, let's allow Honorable Sheikh to come in. You'll come in after him. My apology.
Sorry for that, Chairperson. Okay, I think all I want to know is this. What research have you done in deciding that you want to bail out Eskom again for 254 billion? Given the fact that the reports that is forthcoming is that a very large percentage is as a result of sabotage and some levels of corruption and things that is continuously taking place. So the question is, you'll give 254 billion relief right now. It's going to continue, but we haven't got to the bottom of the root causes of what it is. So how long more are you going to maintain it? And just a second one I think I want to touch on is, Minister, it is my opinion that a very large percentage of people in this country don't pay taxes, particularly foreign nationals. Don't you think it's time to go deep down and get every one of them to pay taxes so you can give greater relief to that small 13% or so of the people in this country that is paying taxes and taking care of the rest of the country? And lastly, what do you know about SAA? We're giving another 1 billion. I remember, Trey, that you said you knew nothing about it not long ago. And there's so much of secrecy around this. Could you just assist us in giving us or being more transparent as to what's going on? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh. Honorable George.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. On the Eskom debt transfer conditions, there's a list of conditions that are there, but one of the conditions is not that there wouldn't be a prohibition on more borrowing from Eskom. Now, we know that Eskom is unable to pay its debt. That's why government wants to transfer the debt. But there should be a condition that they can't incur any more, because we know that it's not working. Also, I want to know from the Minister how you can justify this transfer when the former CEO has clearly set out that there are criminal syndicates operating in Eskom. For example, one that is raking in 1 billion rand per month in Mpumalanga. So how can we justify that without a structural change? Also, there's no mention of the new state-owned enterprise holding company. What is the detail on that? Also, the minister said previously that there would be tough love for the state-owned enterprises, yet has now bailed out SAA, Land Bank, and the Post Office again. Why was Post Office bailed out? Because why was SAA bailed out? Because there's supposed to be a consortium that has bought that. So we want some detail on that. And also, will the Post Office bailout be used to fund the proposed state bank? Or is that money going to go to the employees who appear to be retrenched and their medical aids are not paid? And then finally, the fuel levy could have been removed completely if you look at the tax overrun. That's at approximately 80 billion as far as I understand it. And also we could have relieved the pressure on hard-pressed consumers because of the high cost of living by cutting VAT on an expanded basket of food. That would also be affordable if you look at the tax overrun. So I'd like the minister to comment on that, please. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable George. Can I request members who have spoken to please take down their hands? Thank you. So that Honorable Writer, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good, thanks. I'll be as fast as I can. The 5 billion rand raid on the contingency reserve to bail out the land bank. Well, it wasn't even mentioned in the speech yesterday. We had to fish that out. Even the eloquent Mr. Sishi struggled to get the words out of his mouth this morning. But why was it not mentioned in the speech? I think it's material enough. Certainly, if you can mention 1 billion for SAA, 2.4 for the Post Bank, one should mention the 5 billion rand for the land bank. But then I know that the people of KwaZulu-Natal, with the floods that they experienced, were indicating that they still require substantial funding in order to recover their infrastructural damage that was done. Surely that's what the contingency fund is supposed to be for, the contingency reserve. And why weren't they given some access to this? I feel it's inappropriate that it goes towards the land bank. That's first. The Eskom debt relief bill is interesting. It is a proposal to clear out the top of the balance sheet. And I note that that's going to be, well, not matched, but balanced a little bit with the cleaning up of the bottom of the balance sheet with local government debt. Obviously, as the NCRP, this interests us substantially. It's certainly going to need careful monitoring. And we'd like to hear if there's only going to be a once-off debt forgiveness for municipalities, and hear a little bit about the conditions that are happening there. While we're on Eskom as well, the restructure of Eskom, the splitting into the 3 component entities, seems to have gone off the table. If we can just get some clarity on that. There was mention of an independent review, process review in yesterday's speech. So have we abandoned that plan to split Eskom into 3? The establishment of an infrastructure agency appears to be a vote of no confidence in public works. Just an indication, there was a comment that this bill is going to be tabled later this year in Parliament. Will this again be placed in the presidency? Yeah, and I mean, I share the concern because there are no catalytic projects that are going to bolster growth that were listed in the projects mentioned in the speech yesterday. My last one, Chair, just relates to a paragraph on page 13 of yesterday's speech where, and I'm going to quote it quickly, they need to be complemented by a policy environment that promotes the performance of productive sectors in an integrated way. This will require difficult but necessary trade-offs to ensure that the appropriate support. Is that an indication or a comment on BEE and preferential procurement? Can we look forward to relaxing of that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ryder. Honorable Morolong, Honorable Randall, and Honorable Kaiso in that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The first question in relation to the take-on of the debt of Eskom. What is the differential in the cost of capital that Treasury will pay on the debt instead of Eskom? Has any consideration been given to the conversion of some of Eskom debt into equity? If we can also find out, Chair, what is penciled into the budget percentage-wise for the increase in the public sector wages? And finally, what are the conditions which are attached to the financial support packages for SAA? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Morolong. Honorable Randall, please come in.
Morning, Honorable Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. My question would only be with regards to the havoc that load shedding has been causing municipalities in terms of infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, maintenance and repairs. I would love to know whether there has been additional allocations made in terms of infrastructure maintenance and repairs to our local municipalities, or would it be up to themselves to then reprioritize funding as they receive it? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Randall. I'll have Honorable Kaiso, Honorable Peters, Honorable Shivambu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thank you for the presentation made by the team led by the Minister. Honorable Chair, just 2 questions, but firstly, we'd like to acknowledge and accept and support the budget statement made by the Minister. It's going to really going to try. It's a step ahead in as far as addressing a number of challenges faced by our people, and in fact, the state-owned entities that are in trouble. And also want to welcome the assistance that the Eskom will receive from this budget. But then on one of the questions that I wanted to check with the Minister is around the issue of the 2 billion rand. Does that include also, or one would love to see a situation where the intervention of 2 billion rand is made, then there is a way to halt or to put in abeyance the issues of retrenchment as one of the conditions. It would really make a lot of sense to those workers at post office. But one would like to welcome that assistance of 2 billion rand. Secondly is, I didn't catch up with the issue that now that we will have the new ministry, will the budget be packaged in in presidency, or it would have its independent budget, and where is it going to be located? Thank you very much. Just those two questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honorable Peters.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I also want to start by thanking the Minister for the budget as presented. They say in life you need to be thankful or count your blessings. I'm happy that for the Minister's intervention with regard to the water situation in the Solplaiki municipality, with the intervention for the Riverton water supply system, because for us as residents of Kimberley, this is a long time intervention that we really greatly need to appreciate. But I also want to thank the Minister for the extension of the SRD, but I believe that that is not enough. The Minister, we would like to know whether there is work which you are doing as National Treasury to look at the intervention that could probably extend to the poorest of the poor, the grant in terms of those who are unemployed between the ages of 18 and 59 with the basic income support. And Minister, you would remember that there was a suggestion for a kind of survey or study or research that National Treasury together with a Department of Social Development could do to look at funding this basic income support in terms of taxing the rich to be able to give to the poor. Remember, in the Freedom Charter, we say the wealth of the country shall be shared amongst those who work it, but we also believe that there needs to be intervention for those poorest of the poor who are unable to get jobs, especially the unemployment rate amongst the young people, and in particular those that are graduates. But also, Chairperson, Minister, you would be aware that there's been a campaign by widows in South Africa for a tax relief, because truly speaking, the platform that we engaged with them shows that these poor widows are multiple taxed, and it is important that the Minister, together with other agencies of National Treasury, could look at to some kind of relief. You know, it's painful to see a statement of a widow that says they owe SARS an amount of 400,000. And they say when they consult with the consultants in SARS, they are being told to go and save and all those type of things. How do you save when you've got nothing? And I would believe that it is important that the Minister looks into that. I support Honorable Sheikh with regard to taxation of the foreign nationals who've got businesses in this country. And most of the small businesses in our communities, you'd find that they are in the hands of foreign nationals. And you ask yourself, who do they pay tax to? And are they registered as businesses in this country? And I believe that would help the South African business, small businesses, for some kind of tax relief. Chairperson, the other thing that I want to indicate is, thank you, Minister, for the announcement on the relief for municipal debt, and also coupling it with the metering system. But I would want to find out whether COGTA and SALGA and National Treasury has engaged with regard to, once the debt has been attended to, every household being, whether it's a backyard room or it's a shack, everyone having his or her own meter over and above the meter that would be attached to the main house of UMA stands. But also, Chairperson, lastly, there is this announcement the Minister made about some kind of incentive for household solar energy efficiency and demand side management interventions. I would believe that when the president made the announcement in July, there are households and businesses that took the opportunity to install these solar panels. And the minister says the tax or this thing, the incentive that would be given starts on the 1st of April till next year. What about those who started July? And I would believe that, Minister, you need to probably look at how you incentivize those who started July so as to that they could continue with the interventions that they have made. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think time has caught up with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Peters. Honorable Shivambu, please come in.
No, thank you very much, Chair. No, thank you very much, Chair.
Continue, Honorable Shivambu.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Like, first, I want to express displeasure over the fact that we are not having this meeting physically, because there's nothing that is stopping us from having this meeting physically. And it looks like National Treasury finds it very easy to not honor the obligations of coming to appear before Parliament. It looks like the tail is now wagging the dog in terms of what happens now. Our parliamentary program and engagements are being dictated as to how and what the minister feels. That is unacceptable, because after presenting a budget, he must appear physically before the members of Parliament to answer and substantiate on issues that you have spoken about, because a lot of things are just plainly objectionable and wrong direction. Now, having dealt with that, let me now deal with the key issues that so at the center of the crisis that we're facing as South Africa currently is the crisis of electricity. And at the center of lack of electricity is because there is not adequate generation of electricity. And you're giving Eskom a debt relief of 240 billion upward. And in that debt relief, your emphasis is that Eskom should solely focus and prioritize transmission and distribution. What is Eskom going to transmit and distribute if there is no focus on generation of electricity? Because those are the conditionalities that we have attached to the debt relief that is being given to Eskom. And it justifies, actually legitimates what we said before. Your obsession is to want to privatize the generation of electricity. And you have had more than 6 bid windows now for these private generators of electricity, and they've not come to the party. And they warned there's not in the foreseeable future is a situation where we're going to have the private sector generating the adequate electricity that is needed to keep the lights on, to keep the economy going. So whatever you have said there in terms of everything else, it will come to zero, because there's no electricity in South Africa. And you are saying that Eskom must not be involved in electricity generation, must only focus on transmission and distribution. Distribute what? So that is one of the issues that have to be exposed in terms of what you have to deal with. And two, you're saying that your intervention in terms of what should happen is in relation to the tax relief for the people who are going to buy the solar panels and everything else there. Also, that is an absolute rubbish, because you know who will be eligible in South Africa. So if you were to check just how many people are on the bracket that will be eligible to buy solar panels and apply for tax relief and everything else there. If you look into that, it's a tiny minority of South Africa. In different or clearer terms, it's going to be majority of white people, it's those who are previously disadvantaged. Or previously advantaged, I mean to say. Majority of our people are not within that space to claim a tax relief, because you have got more than 20 million people on social grants. Where are they going to get the money to buy the solar panels, which saying is a relief for electricity? So everything else that you have done and said is that it's absolute nonsense, because there's no electricity in South Africa. And you are not saying anything as to what are we going to do
to get electricity. What are we going to do to get electricity? Because you're saying Eskom must not generate electricity, must just focus on transmission and distribution. Where is the electricity going to come from? So all these things that we're talking about, and yet I hear people like trying to praise a minister who just spoke absolutely nothing that is relevant in the current context. I think we must begin to be honest to ourselves as individuals first as to what are we dealing with now, instead of just being praised singers in a situation that is not acceptable. We have got a crisis in South Africa. The energy available factor is declining drastically. It will go below 20% very soon. And we might have a total lockdown of electricity as a whole. And that affects water supply. It affects water, food security. It affects everything else that is needed. So those are the issues that are observed in Chair, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Honorable Shivambu. Let me come in with one or two questions from my side while welcoming the presentation. Minister, we raised this thing during the MTBS, the question of funding of small business, of funding of Black-owned companies, women-owned companies. That's still very conspicuous with its absence. The allocation, for instance, which goes to CFA and so on, it doesn't go anywhere closer to dealing with the challenge that is there. You know that banks are very reluctant to lend to small businesses, to lend to Black businesses who don't have collateral and so on and so forth. Me and you have spoken about the requirement, which is a barrier to entry of own equity contribution. So that just ensures that perpetually Black people will be on the margins of the economy. What can we do? There's nothing which is coming up out here. Banks, you know that banks, for a number of reasons, rightly or wrongly, they would like collateral which Black people don't have before they deal with them and so on. Again, have you ever considered a discriminatory, it's an economic term, lending to try and deal with 350 years of economic exclusion as far as DFIs are concerned? That is preferential rates and so on and so forth. That's done in other economies to try and level the playing field. Have we dealt with that? In fact, Mavunda, the president of South African Hawkers Association, reflecting on the budget, he bemoans that point that the government is not walking the talk. We talk about the importance of small businesses in township economies in terms of growing the economy, but we don't walk the talk because in the budget that doesn't feature. What will be your comment? And then just say, honorable members will definitely find time where we engage more extensively with the minister, having had the opportunity to read the thick documents that were presented with the budget speech yesterday. I think minister, we must try and get that meeting going as soon as you come back. Can I take it back? Can we hear you, Minister, and your team, how you respond to the questions and the suggestions which have been raised by the honorable members? Thank you.
Chairperson, I'll give the team to deal with some of the issues, but clearly, Honorable Dutoy has issues about I think Chris will handle that. The issues raised by Honorable Dutoy. The issue raised by Sheikh, what is happening here? Okay. The issues raised by...
We can hear you, Minister.
Okay. We have, appointed a team which is going to do an assessment of Eskom's operations, an independent team composed of skilled people, even some from established companies across the globe. So to give us a better understanding, they'll go operation by operation and at Eskom. That will assist us to say what exactly and other conditions we need to attach to the law. In that sense, we're doing what Sheikh Imam is trying to say, to go to the bottom of the understanding of Eskom's issues. The SA issue, which has been raised by a couple of members, SA issue. There was a decision by cabinet, and that decision was a response to quantification of what was called the business rescue process, which was legacy debt of Eskom, among others, which included unflown tickets and so on and so on. That staff cabinet took a decision to fund. Of course, we will have, as we find that, attach certain conditions, as I have indicated in the speech, so that we don't have any further obligations. We sort out the obligations are becoming clear and transparent. The Eskom's issue. Let me start with two broad points which we make in the statement. The first one is that we need to clear Eskom's balance sheet so that Eskom can be able to do what they're supposed to do properly. And we'll come back to that point. The second point is that in any event, some institutions have already penciled in Eskom's debt as ours, precisely because it's guaranteed, about 337 billion. So we needed to do that. Now, what is at stake in the debate about Eskom at the moment? Eskom has got 48 or 45,000 installed capacity. But Eskom can hardly give us 26. There are engineers who were volunteering, working separately, including who used to work in Eskom, who came to the conclusion, and all engineers are saying, the main problem is plant maintenance and increasing plant performance. What we're putting as a condition is that Eskom must focus on that plant performance. If they invest in any capacity, it must be increasing that plant performance and maintenance. And secondly, transmission is also a problem. Distribution, not only at Eskom level, but at municipality level, is going to be a problem. All of those things need to be attended. In that sense, if Eskom recover, even if it's an additional, it takes us another 8,000 megawatts from existing plants, that's an investment would require, there will be need for capacity to do that. For instance, we are told that in Northern Cape, the renewables project, which got about 30,000 megawatts, which can be transmitted because Eskom doesn't have the transmission there. You know, on the criminal syndicates in Eskom,
Minister, I don't know whether
yes.
only we lost you for a second. Please repeat that.
Yeah, I'm saying on the criminal syndicates in Eskom. Can you hear me now?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, on the criminal syndicates in Eskom, the CEO of Eskom is economic with the truth, because when the CEO of ESCOM raised these matters with government, in particular the corruption in Mpumalanga, and an investigation was done and found that, yes, indeed, there's some syndicates in Mpumalanga, which also included the police. What government did was to set up a task team composed of all the law enforcement agencies. They've just moved into mega work. They've arrested a number of people as a result of that. So I find it difficult to take that statement. Insofar as the new holding company is concerned, it's an idea which is being proposed by an advisory team on state ownership, on state organization, on state institutions. It has not been set up yet. Not been set up yet. Is the money going to South African Post Office also going to fund the State Bank? No. There are two institutions that are there. There's the Post Bank and there's South African Post Offices, whatever it is, services. So what we're dealing with is the South African Post Office, including the challenges it faces. SARS has attached certain assets, medical aid is a problem. So we're dealing with a number of things. Obviously, there will be some conditions even there, which will, because we need to have a clear definition of what is the end state of the post office? What are the restructuring, if we're doing restructuring, in what direction? What is the end state? We need to finalize all of those things. Honorable George, insofar as the fuel levy and VAT, I know those are your pet subjects. And as we do these things in a budget environment, the policy choices you need to make, and I accept that that's the policy choice, you say it must be done. In the available evidence and the kind of pressures we have for spending, it's difficult to cut most taxes. Honorable Ryder says we're hiding the land bank. No, the decision about the land bank was announced, the allocation in land bank was announced long ago by my predecessor. I don't know whether in 2020 or 2020.
Honourable members, can you still hear the minister? It's myself.
No, we cannot hear the minister.
Okay, minister, we are losing you.
Reason the transfer.
Minister.
The minister must go back on a statement.
Minister.
On his statement, I mean.
Minister. Minister. Okay. Deputy Minister, you're on the platform. Please come in, or while the minister is still trying to reconnect. I think the point is taken, Honorable Ryder. Definitely, I think our next interaction with the minister will have to do it physical. But the minister having spoken, can I allow the officials to come in and take those questions while the minister is trying to reconnect?
Thanks, Chair. I think there were other questions, some of the questions the minister is answering, and I just hope. Chair?
Just hold, Honorable Deputy Minister. The minister has just called me. He's saying, can you please accept him, Secretariat? Yes, Honorable Shibambu, you wanted to say something before I allow the
Yeah.
people?
Honestly, like this is a disrespect altogether. There's no suitable reason why Mr. Enoch Otunwan can't come to Parliament and the budget in front of them. Look, now I've been subjected to this statistical card and everything. There is no explanation adequately of what should have been. I don't understand on what basis we have to meet in this way when we've got an option. There's nothing that there's no COVID that made us to utilize the job. Why are we being subjected to this absolute rubbish?
Honorable Shibambu, the point was made, and I agreed from my side that definitely our next interaction with National Treasury will have to be physical for the reasons that have always been already have been shared by the oral members. So we take that point. I've already accepted that, and we must do that. I agree. Deputy Minister Oromasondo, please come in.
Thanks once more, Chair. I was saying the Minister has answered some of the questions at length, including the question posed by Honorable. From Honorable Peters regarding why don't you go pre-March in terms of using the tax liabilities for household individuals who will be investing in from this tax incentive that we've announced. I think it's going to be very difficult to go back, because the question is going to be how far do you go back? And once you say you're going back pre-March 2023, these other people probably invested in the solar or renewables on their households. And there are also tax implications in this regard, because what it means is that you're going to lose more revenue depending on how far you go. So starting in March, it makes a lot of sense, because otherwise there's just huge implications about you're opening up a debate on how far do you go, and wherever you go, there are tax implications insofar as this issue is concerned. And there's an issue raised by Honorable Shibambu about the conditions for the debt solution that the minister has announced yesterday in the budget, the debt solution for ESCOM. I think the attached conditions are also linked to the generation. So ESCOM is expected to improve its plant performance. So that issue is catered for in the W3 annexure that is in our budget review, is part and parcel of the ESCOM debt relief package that we've put together. Now, there's an issue about privatization. Chair, I do think that we need to distinguish two things here. One is a liberalization of the sector. In this instance, liberalizing the sector so that it's not dominated by one monopoly, and that is to be distinguished from privatization. And what we've been doing as government is to with license issues megawatts There is a bill that we're bringing to Parliament, which is about further liberalization of the energy sector so that no one company, whether state or private, dominate the sector, because relying on one big company, we've seen what it has done to the economy. It poses a huge systemic risk, not only for business, but also for households. We're experiencing load shedding at the moment, precisely because of a number of problems that I don't want to get into on why Eskom it is where it is now, but also the fact that we relied on one energy company has generated a lot of problems. So part of the bill that will be tabled before Parliament, the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill, seeks to establish a competitive electricity market so that you'll have multiple generators of energy into the space. And it doesn't mean that Eskom will be sold out. Eskom will still play a part in the energy generation, but it has to compete with other generators. So there's no intention to privatize Eskom from energy generation. But of course, as the minister said, the assessment by the team that has been put together by Treasury assessing each plant will have to look at the recommendations that come from the from that inquiry. And I do think, Chair, that of course we've got to look at the non-core assets of Eskom. There are certain assets which are not linked either to generation or transmission or distribution of energy of Eskom. The question is, does Eskom really require to have some of these assets in its balance sheet, the Eskom Finance Company, as an example? And that is where we have to say, shouldn't Eskom get rid of some of those assets? But there's no intention to privatize, as it were, the strategic assets of Eskom. Eskom will still play a critical role in the generation of energy. Is a question of just making sure that it's not only, we're not going to be relying only on Eskom to generate energy for the economy. And that's the path that we've taken of making sure that we liberalize the energy space. And we're not the only ones doing this. The different parts of the world are basically learned from the dangers of relying on one monopoly for energy generation. Now, on the support for SMMEs, Honorable Buthelezi, I think we've rejigged the credit guarantee scheme, in which we said we made it easy for the SMMEs to borrow for investing in the renewables. So it's not just the tax, reducing the tax liabilities of companies that invest in renewables, but we've also said, let us also make it easy for SMMEs that want to invest in the renewables through the bounce back credit guarantee scheme that we have rejigged in a manner that should assist SMMEs to invest or borrow money to invest in the renewables. I don't know if the minister is back. Let me check, Chair, if the minister is back. If he's not back, I'm going to ask my colleagues from National Treasury to answer some of the specific questions that have been posed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll allow your officials to come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, DM, Deputy Minister. There are several questions and I have several colleagues who will answer them. Mr. Chris Axelson will talk to the tax question. Dr. Peterson can answer any other questions outstanding on ESCOM, although the minister covered a lot of them. On my side, there's just a couple of things. The first is, and then Dr. Modise on, excuse me, on the disasters, the recently declared disaster, which was asked by Honorable Du Toit. Honorable Ryder asked a question about the establishment of an infrastructure agency. Just to respond that this actually was an initiative from both the Minister of Public Works and the President originally. And we are working together with Public Works on this arrangement in respect of an infrastructure agency to create a more coordinated approach, particularly as it relates to large or what we call mega infrastructure projects, especially those where the private sector can be involved, in other words, can be crowded in terms of providing both finance and expertise. There was a question from Honorable Morolong about the wages and what's in the budget for wages. I think it's important to indicate, as the minister said in his speech yesterday, that the budget does not preempt the outcome of the wage negotiations for 2023. And this has been a specific policy position which the minister has articulated in the past publicly. And so in the budget at the moment, we include, as indicated, a wage increase that was first implemented in 2022 and its carry-through effects adjusted for inflation across the MTEF. Honorable Kaiso asked a question about money for the new Ministry of Electricity. The Ministry of Electricity was very recently announced by the President and of course is not yet established. I will ask my colleagues to come in, starting with Chris Axelson on the tax question, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Edgar. Thank you, honourable members. On the requirements for the additional deduction to 125% for renewable energy projects for businesses, this follows the same requirements as the current section in the Income Tax Act, the Section 12B. There are some conditions related to the fact that it must be new renewable energy projects, and there are some conditions related to restricting leasing, some types of leasing arrangements. And they are the same, so we haven't made any further conditions on those, and the industry have been using the current 12B, so they should know it quite well. On the 15,000 Rand cap for individual solar, this was primarily driven by the need to curtail the potential revenue loss for this measure, so reduce the amount of potential revenue foregone, although we won't know exactly how much it will be until take-up is done and the whole process is completed. It is also a measure to try and increase the progressivity of the measure so that larger and higher income households don't pay an excessive amount. In terms of when the bill will be published, we've indicated in the frequently asked questions on the rooftop solar for individuals that it would be before the draft taxation laws amendment bill, which is usually in June. We have published that frequently asked questions document alongside the budget on the website to try and give additional detail to individuals.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. Duncan Peterson here, responsible for asset and liability management at the National Treasury. The Minister covered quite a few of the ESCOM Land Bank and SAA questions, but there were a few others which I wanted to come on very briefly. The one question was, how will the ESCOM debt relief be financed? Quite simply, because we are servicing all of Eskom's debt over the next 3 years, that will be financed by the National Treasury as part of our gross borrowing requirement in the same way as we currently finance the deficit. There was a question on what informed the bailout to Eskom and the research and the different factors. Principally, it was about the fact that the current approach of providing 230 billion to Eskom over 10 years clearly did not solve its solvency and liquidity challenges because the entity is not able to service its debt from internally generated cash flows. And the guaranteed debt in particular that Eskom has of 350 billion was a contingent or is a contingent liability. And as soon as that becomes at risk of default, it raises our borrowing cost and our risk premium, which is why the intervention was done. There was a question about Eskom's borrowing. We are restricting Eskom's borrowing for the debt relief period. So to clarify, Eskom will not be allowed to borrow during the debt relief period, except if the Minister of Finance provides that permission. There was a question about the conditions for municipal debt relief. We will be publishing, honourable members, those detailed conditions in a Treasury circular during the course of March. But one of the key conditions there is that those municipalities will be expected to keep their current accounts up to date. There was a question about unbundling and whether it's off the table. Quite the opposite. It's very important for the credibility of both the debt relief arrangement, but also for Eskom going forward, that the progress that has been made on unbundling continues. And of course, the next step is the full finalization and corporatization of the transmission entity. And the two outstanding matters there are, of course, the license, which NERSA advertised last week, and then the finalization of the board, which DPE is working on. There was a question on the differential between Eskom bonds and Treasury bonds. There was a question about the cost, the difference in the cost of borrowing between Eskom and the National Treasury. The easiest way to express that is through the differential on the yields of Eskom bonds and the yields of equivalent sovereign bonds. The unguaranteed bonds of Eskom typically trade around 200 to 250 basis points higher than government bonds, and Eskom guaranteed bonds trade typically around 80 basis points higher than the equivalent government bond. So that gives one a sense of the cost of funding differential between Eskom and the Treasury and the sovereign. There was a question about the conversion of debt to equity. That is not part of the solution, mainly because it's widely viewed that if we were to convert Eskom debt directly to equity, that would be constituted by the rating agencies and others as a distressed exchange and would therefore trigger a whole range of issues, including ratings downgrades. Finally, there was a comment about the lack of focus of Eskom on generation. And I think it's important to just highlight that in terms of the condition that's in Annexure W3 in this regard, we do make the point that Eskom is expected to prioritize capital maintenance on the existing coal fleet. And that's a very important part of ensuring that they continue to focus on generation and that the generation capex insofar as the coal fleet is not compromised, because that's a very important part of resolving load shedding in the short to medium term. Thank you, Honourable Chair. I will leave it there and hand over to my colleague, Dr. Modise, for any other responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Good afternoon, Chairperson, honorable members. The two questions I'm going to deal with, one is small business development. In addition to the incentives that were provided in the budget, I thought it would be important for me to mention that the Department of Small Business will be getting in total 2.5 billion in 23-24, and that amount increases to 2.8 billion in 2025-26. And this is mainly for development finance as well as enterprise development. So this is only in the space of small business development, but the DTIC as well has programs that do benefit small, medium term enterprises. The support, I think, is combined. One is the support that is a direct support from the spending side, which will be through the Department of Small Development, but also you have the incentives that the colleagues have spoken about. The second question was on the social relief distress grants and the work that we're doing there. So the chairperson and honorable members, what we try to do is we try to make sure that we look at the overall grants that were provided in the system, grants that are provided in the system. But secondly, we also have to look at the overall social wage that has been provided. So what we have started doing between the Department of Social Development as well as the presidency is to look at how do we rationalize, one, the social grants that already exist, but also how do we bring together or bring into the conversation the public employment programs that already exist. And we're also looking at how can the Department of Employment and Labor through its labor centers assist in ensuring that not only do we focus on the grants, but how do we transition especially the youth into the job market, and we can do that through some of the labor centers that have been provided. Of course, we still have to think about how do we increase the labor centers, because currently they won't be able to absorb the magnitude of the numbers that we're looking at, but also how do we then start having statistics for household rather than individual statistics. So that work is ongoing, and that's another reason that we had to only announce this for 1 year, because we have to finalize the work on how this SRD is going to look like and what will be the outcome of this. And then the last question, Chair and honorable members, that I'm going to respond to is the question on disaster financing. So Minister in his speech specified basically how disaster financing works, but basically after we experienced significant disasters prior to MTBPS, the amount that was allocated was insufficient. This was a 1 billion that was allocated in the start of the year. We allocated an additional 695 million that will be available between MTBPS and budget, because of course you can't restrict the disaster financing to MTBPS and budget. As you know, disasters they don't have an appointment. So the 695 is what we're going to allocate between now and budget. But of course, the frameworks allow for provinces and municipalities to reprioritize their current grants that they have. And because the municipal year is between June and July, they still have half a year to go. So there's definitely sources of funding that they can reprioritize towards these grants. But also, as we said, when it comes to next year, of course, the provinces and the municipalities can then apply through the process that we refer to as unforeseen and unavoidable. But the second part of disaster funding that is also critical is pertaining to recovery and repair, where the municipalities must ensure that they do proper costing of the damages and how much they're going to cost to repair. And once that is done, then that process goes through the normal budget process. So this is not restricted to the contingency reserve. I mean, it takes long to do the quantification and qualification of some of these disasters. So once they have a view of how much they're gonna cost, then of course we will take the applications through the budget process. I think what is critical and we're trying to make clear in the statement is that there is money that is allocated for disasters, not only the two disasters in these two provinces, but all in all, money is allocated. And of course, we can use the contingency reserve for emergency funding, but it doesn't mean we're going to use the 5 billion to allocate for even the repairs. That will definitely form part of the normal budget process. We have already allocated funding in this budget round for disasters that took place last year and the year prior. So we will always do an allocation for disasters through the normal budget process. Thank you, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you, DM and the team. Honorable members, I think one issue came out very loud and clear is the question of one. Let's try to have a physical meeting. Two, we must still interact with the minister as these committees. As we're busy with our meeting, I communicated with the minister's office, trying to find out when is he coming back from his international engagement. He's back next week. And I've already said that we need that meeting next week. We will be communicating with the other chairs and the secretaries to try and find a time as early as possible next week, so that we can further engage with the minister or member. So I think that point it's well taken, and that's what we're committing from our side to do. Honorable DM, I think you hear that. Immediately the minister, I've just found out he's coming back definitely next week, and we must meet with the minister as the committees. So the point being made is it's well taken. And lastly, honorable members, I always discourage the writing of our views on the platform for a simple reason that a meeting easily degenerates, and people say all types of things, and other people feel obliged to respond. So I'll request that let's restrain ourselves. That would be a plea from the chair. And lastly, thank Team Treasury for the presentations and engagement. And if you like, this is half time. We'll Honorable George, I can see now I thought I was closing the meeting, and I've said that we are going to get another meeting with the minister. Can you bear with me? There's going to be a second bite for us to engage with all the issues that we'd love to. So as I'm saying, this is half time. We'll be meeting, so I can see you insist, and you want me to reopen, Mr. George. I'm reluctantly doing this.
Chair, no, I'm not asking you to reopen, but what I do want to do though is, because we've had very limited amount of time, but something that struck me and something that I think needs to be addressed is that I'm looking at the detailed paperwork that we got with the budget speech, and their Treasury is talking about a projection that they made on GDP of I just want to get now, sorry, yes, growth was adjusted upwards from 1.9% to 2.5%. So what I want to know from Treasury, I don't need to know it now, but what I want to find out from Treasury is what they actually based this, their projected numbers on. So the fiscal framework, etc. Because if they have over projected on GDP, then we're going to have a very significant problem, because the numbers are going to be overstated. And then they're going to have to be revised downward next year, I would think. But I just wanted to find that out, but we don't have to go into it now. But I just thought I would mention it before the committee ended, because I think it is a very important matter. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honorable George, I'm sure these are the types of things that I would have said they'll come to the next meeting. But since you have said it, please let me not allow any other member who wants to come in. Yeah, so Team Treasury, just to repeat, this is half time. We are engaging with you, and if possible, I want this meeting to take place next week. so that the members can have enough time to raise all their points and some of the things which perhaps are emanating from the responses that we have given. Yeah, that takes us to the or perhaps just before that, let me check. Lubabalo, is there any announcement that you would like to make? Or any other secretary on the platform?
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of my colleagues, Chair, I wish to announce that the next meeting of these committees is on Tuesday next week at 9. The committees will be briefed by FFC and PBO. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Before I close the meeting, I got the message that Honorable Mahlangu has lost her brother. Please convey our condolences. So for now, that's what's happening next week. But I think we would like to prioritize the minister. So at the earliest possible time, we may have to communicate with the other members that there may be a slight change on our program next week while we prioritize the minister and the department. Thank you very much, honorable members. This brings us to the end of the meeting.